Breaking news. Breaking news. Ned rigs, the most popular thing on the planet, date back to when? Well, we're going to get into that because not a modern thing. I mean, your granddaddy and your great-granddaddy probably fished with them, but they didn't call him the Great Ned Rig. You ready for it? Fishing history right here. You didn't have any fancy flat heads. You didn't have all these fancy molds. You had a ball head. It's a red one. You didn't have any real fancy baits. No straight tail, none of this, The straight tail stinger came out in like the 50s, 60s, but maybe even 70s. But what did you have? What did they call the Ned rig? Before it was called the Ned rig. Well, the ball head and you have a curly tail. You see where we're going with this? Yeah, this one's a 1/4 ounce, but, when you can pour your own lead, you can get 1/8 ounce, and you get pretty small, right? And no, it didn't have the fancy name BFS either. It wasn't on bait casts, it was on spinner casts. Spinner rods, because those bait casts back in the day couldn't do anything, cast that far. They weren't as high performance. But, ready for it? Boom! Ned rig. You'll say, well, that's just the curly tail. No, that's part of the thing there, It's the Ned rig. The 1950s and 40s. Maybe even earlier, depending on if you look at it, but at least the 50s. Ned rig. You're like, no, that's a curly tail. No, it's a Ned rig. What essentially happened? Well, you had back in the day, you had smallies and all these fishermen fishing little curly tails. Little heads. And this is a 1/4 ounce, God forbid. It's a 1/4 ounce, it's decent size. It's not a 3/4 ounce, anything big, but it is your average size. And back in the day, you had knuckle busters. You know what? Knuckle busters are reels that the spool goes, as fast as the spool goes, the handle spins, right? That was the 40s, 20s, 40s, the 20s, 30s, 40s, right? So you had these knuckle busters. There were no bearings. It was, I forget what they call them, but jig masters, stuff like that. They just rust big and bulky, and they didn't have a lot of distance. They didn't have smoothness like we have now. So they didn't throw little 1/8 ounce on bait casts. They had to throw something with a little bit of size. They didn't have a lot of distance. But, go through my spinner rods. Ned rig. From the 1940s. What is today's Ned rig? This. You say, well, no, it's not. It's a curly tail and jig head. Well, yeah. It's just straight tail worms shortened in these inventions of Cinco, these meat stick style worms, they just put in there and called a Ned rig. Fish are real slow on the bottom. All that stuff did back in the day. Just because there's a coined phrase in the market. Big baits. Swim bait fishing, AC plugs in the 80s. That was the original big bait. Plugs. Big plugs in swim baits. Then all of a sudden the soft baits came out. Early 2000s, middle 2000s, and Kenny Huddleston and Clear Lake. That all took off, 316. That was kind of the craze. Big baits for AC plugs. Striper plugs. AC plugs in freshwater. Big baits. Now, just because today you see all these fancy swim baits, people are like, well, that's a plug. That's not a swim bait. No, that was the swim bait of the day. You guys got to understand, since someone puts it on the internet, it doesn't mean, and has gazillion followers, it doesn't mean they are the ones that came up with it. Or some pro coins this thing and the companies capitalize on it because they want to make money. Ned rig. Yeah, you can get smaller on spinning rods, but they just drag this along the bottom. And these Mr. Twisters here have just enough just to have a little bit of kick. That tantalizing slow spin, smallmouth ate it, largemouth ate it. And I guarantee you, you're going to find in the record books that twister tails, little single twister tails, have caught more fish than anything on the market. Why? Because there's not a thing out there, freshwater, saltwater, that won't eat this. Because it mimics just about any bait fish you want. So, that was the original Ned. Right there, a jig head with the worm on it, short worm. But all of a sudden, you get these tournaments out there now. You got this internet everywhere. You got people video cameras with everything. Some of that, gets, one of those stand-up heads, puts a little worm on there, cuts Cinco down, starts fishing, winning tournaments. All of a sudden, boom, all of a sudden there's this Ned talk. You got these TRDs. Sorry, but the TRDs and that company that thinks, talks about, oh, we invented the Ned fishing. No, he didn't. I would be lying if I said some of these companies out there don't capitalize on the fact that there's the newer generation on the internet that coins things a certain term and then tries to capitalize on it to make money. The NED bait. Oh my gosh, it's a straight tail fat worm. It's NED, you know, this whole craze. No, it's not. BFS. Oh my gosh, it's super light stuff. Yeah, it's essentially light tackle fishing on bait casters. It's nothing new, it's just different gear. But they coined it BFS. They coined it NED. Because it's this fancy selling point. If you understand fishing history, that's very kind of you, Tilly. My dog just kicked his stand. But you understand that things go back further than you would think. Kind of shocking to me that someone that's 24 years old was born in 2000. Because I was fishing in 2000 with things, and I was like, man, this stuff's revolutionary. Now I look at things, I'm like, you know, what's going on? But that is the NED of the day. I'll tell you this 100 times. You guys still go around talking about how, you know, the NED's this great thing, new thing, but it's not. Everything derived from going on a lead head, down to small, straight tails, whatever. It all evolved, right? But it started from that. That is the 1940s NED. Now, why do I have a redhead on there? Well, no reason. I was from different fishery, but the whitetail redhead, that alone will kill him. Nothing fancy. Nothing fancy in the bait. Just the action and the redhead to catch their eye. Dialed. Crappie will eat this. Bass will eat this. Anything out there, saltwater fish will eat it. You throw it for a tuna, tuna's going to eat it. Will you have the tuna on for long? I don't know. The hook probably will break. But everything eats it. It is bait fish. And that is kind of the idea. Ned started in the 40s. Got put on jig heads. You know, and you had little jig heads. You had full-size baits. You had, which were 6-inch worms, all that stuff. All the different worms out there are fished on jig heads. Because there was no, like, Texas rigging weights and all this other stuff. Kind of all evolved, but you get the idea, right? This stuff was already fished. It's just the latest. The internet's here and everybody's capitalizing on the coin NED fishing, but it's really not. What does NED stand for? I don't know. Fishing history is important. People talk about what we need to get rid of history. Well, first of all, you get rid of history, you're doomed to repeat it. Well, here we are, repeating the original NED, original jig head and small worm, as NED fishing. History's already repeating itself. History's already being reinvented as this new thing when it's not. Swim baits. AC plugs. Big old AC plugs. What did those walking dog baits, those black dog, big walking plugs? Saltwater plugs. Turned it into a freshwater enhanced bait. It all comes from somewhere, guys. Bass fishing influences salmon fishing and steelhead fishing. All these different markets are doing different things. Coho fishing. The predatory fish, they react to stuff. So now all of a sudden they're twitching this stuff, jigging it to get reactions. Saltwater stuff, bass stuff, into there, catching them there. All these different markets are bringing on to things, but they're not new. People in that field may have not heard of it, and also this is a new thing. But when you look down to history and fishing history, it goes back far, right? You ask Roland Martin, when he's not being sponsored by a product to push things, you know, you ask him, hey, Roland, how far does like the NED jig head bait goes back? He'll say, well, since I started. I mean, heck, my grandfather would probably say fishing it, you know, my dad or whatever. So yeah, that is essentially what it was. And it derived from all this fancy cutting angles, straight tail worms, all this twitching, all these fancy techniques. And people talk about stitching. It's just dragging it. Well, stitching it, hopping it, doing whatever you do to fish net on the bottom. Well, that is essentially called dragging a jig head. In its simplest form. It's not new. But you guys got to be careful of that stuff, right? The market is there to make money. The market is there to sell you a product. I saw someone come out recently with this new bait, great thing, right? Hank Parker. Not Hank Parker's fault. Hank Parker's fault. He was sponsored by him. He has to say what he says, right? It's business. You say what you have to say. You don't say what you don't have to say, right? But in an interview site, Burke comes out with this new revolutionary, great hula grub, right? But they say, oh, we came out with this great idea. We changed the tentacles on the end. We changed it all up to make it our own. We came out with this. I'm like, a rubber skirt on a rubber body with a different tail is essentially a hula grub changed. It is not your idea. Sorry, Berkeley. But it kind of came from things, right? Hank Parker, like, we came up with this great idea, talking about it, he's like, this great bait, talking about it. The thing that caught my attention was, said, oh yeah, you can fish this on football head. Well, what did they use to fish, kind of go-to fishing hula grubs, was on a football head, because it stood upright and just stood good and aggressive in the water. That was the original idea for the original hula grub by Yamamoto. So, little comments like that, when you know your history, kind of make you go, aha, I know what you're doing. Because everybody was sponsored by them back in the day. So he's like, that's how I fished the original hula grub. I'm going to talk about fishing on this new design. All these strategies that talk about come from different things. Nothing's new on the market. It's all being reinvented. But going back to the original, right there, the original NED. Because it's coined new, it's not. And you watch some of these places like Tackle Warehouse that talk about, oh, this new bait. They put the label new on it. That bait's been there since 2005, bro. They label new so they can sit there and talk about, label it new, but every time they label something new, you watch the price go bump, 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 bump. I watched one bait go up $4 or $5 already, but every time it bumped up, they label, oh, there's new baits in. New bait in stock. It's still thinking raises the price, even though it's not a new bait in stock. Everything's the same. Label's new on this so they can bump the price up. Because if it's not new, they don't put new on there, right? And someone complains about the price. Well, what's going on with the price? They say, well, price is going up. Well, they won't accept it unless there's a word new on it. So labels, new Ned fishing, Ned, all this stuff is just labels for stuff. Know your fishing history, know where it all comes from. And at the end of the day, you want to be good at Ned fishing? Ned fishing. Catch giants like that, none of those were caught in Neds. That's all power fishing. But go back to looking at how they fish jig heads. Read books. Because there's little things in those books, when you start picking it apart, you're like, boom, that is going to fool that giant fish that wouldn't bite. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea. Nobody talks about it. I'm going to keep that in my pocket as a secret. Start picking up these things that I don't talk about, right? I go back, read books. I read books from Europe that talk about a specific type of fishing, even though at different lakes, that none are in the U.S. Why? Because there's little details on fishing certain structure in those lakes that are similar out here. Let's say it's a certain weed patch to fish it this way. Well, you can take that strategy that works there and bring it over here and fish weed patches here and dominate. The whole book is useless besides a couple lines on talking about certain fisheries. Maybe out of the 100 fisheries that I mentioned, there may be 2 fisheries that give a tip, but everybody else can be like, why do I need this? It's European stuff. Well, those little details are what sets you above the rest. It's details. Studying the origins of stuff, studying how it was originally fished, capitalizing on now. Dynamite. Just do your history, people. These big bait manufacturers out there are there to make money. Now, so are my sponsors. But you know what? I align myself with people that I can trust and I use. Why do I use them? Because they work. They're not just reinvented or whatever version they have. Their versions work and they flat out kill fish everywhere as I go. The coast, in the valley, Southern Oregon, anywhere as I go, they catch fish. So I don't have to worry about what lake I go to. I just tell them when I go fish and catch them, right? It's that effective a bait. So when I align myself with companies, they're proven effective everywhere. Doesn't matter where I take them, they're always on my rods. And it's not one of those things where I pick up sponsors and say, oh, I want to be sponsored by it, and then start fishing them. No. The latest sponsor I picked up, Bruce Baits, I have, at one point, 2-gallon bag full, and every time Tackle Warehouse got a certain color in, or the Crazy Cross, I would buy every single one they had in stock. I'd buy the whole stock, so in that shipment, nobody else would get it. Not necessarily for that reason, but for me to have them, to catch them. It derived from the buddy that I had that would go into the store and clear the rack with certain colors that were really productive. So he'd go out there and catch them, nobody else would catch them. But no, it just shows that, like, when something works, I'm going to clear the whole store. Doesn't matter how much it is. I think at one time I was clearing 15 packs of Crazy Cross out of Tackle Warehouse. Every time I reordered, I said, how many do you have? They said, we have this many stock. I said, I'll take every one you have in the warehouse. Gone to my house in my bag. That's how you know Crazy Cross Bruiser's work, right? Bruiser Bait's work. My original bait with Poor Boys. Give me a second, I'll grab it. We're going down history, right? My original Poor Boys bait pack right there. Poor Boys. 2004 at least. I mean, this, I had to get it around 2002 because there was the National Championship on 2001. Champlain. Davey Hayward won 2003. Everstart, Lake Erie, right? Some labels to list on. So I got it probably 2004, like I said. These are the new packs. Same bait. New owner. Consistency, right? Good consistency still, right? They're identical consistencies. But when I say I get sponsored by companies, I'm not fooling around. It's not like I just pick them up. 2004, 2022, 2023, I picked these up. So, and I'm still getting them from them. So that shows that I don't pick up random sponsors. I'm not in it for free stuff. I'm in it for stuff that works to help me to be successful. Because I get a deal, right? And it helps me, someone that, makes a little money here, a little money there, it helps me continue to fish. So that is why I'm in it. And they work. And I'm willing to talk about giants, right? I'm willing to chase those giants with them. I'm willing to go fool that giant that I missed last year. I know where he is. I know the day to be there. I know the week to be there. I know the water level. And I know the rock to stand on. Get this. What I call my personal best, 5 feet to the left. Last year, it was 5 feet to the right, cast out to the right. And I hooked her Freakzilla. Don't ask how it got off. But when it fights harder than any fish you've ever seen, and you've seen numerous 7 to 8 pound largemouth fought, and it pulls, it locks you down and tugs like you've never seen a fish tug on a rod before. I wasn't going to brag to a friend, right? I was saying, it's probably 8 pounds. He said, I started talking about, I was holding back. I was like, 7, 8, whatever. He said, do you think it was 10? I said, I didn't want to sound cocky, but I always want to underplay it, but it was pulling like a 10. I mean, it was, those 7 pounders don't pull that hard. 8 pounders don't pull that hard, right? The one I hooked, dogged way harder. Way harder. And it leaves me wondering if it was 10 or bigger. Because I know the lake that we know of is a 10 in there. A couple of them caught. But it makes me wonder if it's bigger than 10. Because it pulled hard. And it didn't pull like an 8 that I've ever seen anybody catch. And I've seen 8s pull. And when 8s stop, they stop, right? This one, I was cranking on it. A couple cranks, his head go, whoom, 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 and he got off. But those pulls were so aggressive without me gaining on the fish. The fish obviously had his stabilizers out and stopped, and he's just going like this. Big fish, Godzilla size. Godzilla size. Dwarfs those 8 pounders in the back. I know it did. It got off. So I'm going back. I know the day. I know the time. I know the week. And I know the water level and the rock to stand on. The angle to cast. The spot where my bait landed in the lake. Okay. This is stuff that you need to know. Because those fish are going to be there. My PB came from the same area. I just lost one probably twice as big as the one, my PB. In the same spot. Okay. Knowing the feeding areas. Knowing how they, how the fish swim around a lake. Stuff matters. So, do your homework. I just want to point out how NEDs weren't new. I don't pick up just random sponsors. Okay. You guys got to understand, right? My poor boys right here, use them for a long time. Bruiser baits, I've used them since 2016, at least. I think I got my first pack in 2014, 15. I don't just pick up random sponsors. I'm here to use sponsors that I use. I don't approach companies that I don't use. That is called falsifying. It's like getting free stuff. I'm not about that. I'm here to help the sponsors. What can I do for the sponsors? Okay, that's what I'm here for. I digress.